Did you have good weekends? I'm glad. It seems like you have many, many other assignments to do. So mine was nice and easy, hey?
It was easy.
Great, that's so good to hear.
Interesting, which made it not
Oh, that's good. That's good to hear. I like to keep things interesting.
It's
fun to pinpoint who you know who's in what generation.
Yeah. I must tell you, on Saturday, another little job I do is I teach, on behalf of Oxford, I teach teachers, ICT education. And we did generational theory with the teachers. Because, and I should actually show you that slide. Something I prepared last week, but I think you'll like this. Wilson, it's gone again on my screen. Oy vey. See, on Saturday when I did this, it was fine. I swear it's when you are in the room that I need to.
Don't worry.
Well, what is that now?
Go up.
No, just do this here.
There we go.
Okay. I did it.
If you literally just type in Google Flits page of integration, you can come up with it. Wait,
Okay.
There
we go down here.
Declaration.
When I turn it to my desktop.
Up there.
Desktop, hey?
Oh, do you think it would like to turn it in report? No, we can't do this.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Right click.
I had that.
So I'm learning, Wilson.
Options, graphic options.
Oh, not screen resolution.
I got it today.
Sorry.
Hey guys,
Okay, so it's fine. Let's do this. No, not the extend, duplicate.
You could just
You extend when you got two screens side by side. It's
Okay.
okay. That's okay.
Thank you, Wilson.
Yeah.
You are my hero. And every time I say keep changes and it reverts back.
Have what you need. I know that.
So I quickly want to show you this graph, just so that you, because this is now information I got last week that I didn't show you in our lecture on generational theory, but I think that you will find immensely interesting. So the teachers that you say you've never seen this in your life if you ever do see it. This was only a pilot, so it's still all going to change. But it's going to be so small you can't see. But maybe. So this is the traditionalists or maturists up until 1994. Then the baby boomers, you know. Then Generation X. I don't know. Some of you might have this in your assignments. Okay? Good. Generation X, which is me. So 1961 to 1980. The PC was our big thing. Okay? But what is so interesting is this attitude towards career for the teachers. Okay? So all the teachers in the room, we were able to establish we had one baby boomer and all the others were Generation X. So born 1961 to 1980. And I think this gentleman was actually a district official. Then Generation Y, 1981 to 1995. The smartphone was the technology that drove them. And then Generation Z, which is already my daughter. So born after 1995. And augmented reality and virtual reality is their thing. They absolutely love FaceTime. But if you look at this attitude towards career, Generation X's, me, were loyal to the profession but not to an organization, which is completely true, unfortunately. Also, you're very much a career man. And it's actually here where you see the dawn of what is called the gig economy. And we talked about the gig economy. So this was such a nice one to show the teachers, and their mouths are hanging open. Because then we said, you're here. The reality is, you're not even educating, you're educating some of this now. Okay? Some of them now. But we're in 2018. So the next generation has already been born, which is Generation Alpha. Okay, it's very small.
I got the same thing.
Such a good one, this.
Yeah.
But Generation Alpha they're now 2 or 3 years old.
Right.
2, 3, 4 years old. What's so interesting about Generation Alpha, I don't know if those of you saw it, is that they have a baby age is lower than the they get married age. So they are no longer interested in the security of marriage. They are secure and they can look after themselves and they will have children without getting married. Yeah, so just love generational theory.
And all the dates were so contradicting that I
Yeah.
put a huge range.
No, there is. There's a huge range. The point that, I mean, there are some basics about X, Y, and Z, baby boomers and traditionalists, which are the same. So ignore the date, but look at the trends. I think that's the most important thing. And then the big thing is that for the teachers to really make them realize that they're one generation and their pupils are another is a big thing. We made them write user profiles of their kids in class. So we explained what's a user profile, and we said, right, how do your children in class want to be taught? And they wrote, and then we told teachers, how do you want to teach? And then we compared the two. And it really was an eye-opener. So I thought I'd just share that with you, considering that we finished education last week. Michelle, you missed a lovely lecture.
I believe you.
I hope the rest enjoyed it. Right, so before I go into the next thing. So this week we are looking at higher education or tertiary education. And next week we're going to look at the trade industry. I'm hoping to get a guest lecture in for trade. So I'll hopefully be able to confirm that by next week, and then you all have to be in class. Because if it is the person I want, she's really, really fabulous. Yeah, she met Arundhati Roy last week.
Oh,
She was in South Africa, so she's got such nice stories to tell. I'm not even at that level. So hopefully we can get her for next week Monday. Okay, so universities. This is something you should all know a lot about, considering that you are the secondary target market. So, before we delve into tertiary publishing, who has bought a textbook recently except the one for this class? Who bought textbooks at varsity? Who diligently bought textbooks?
I only had one for one class, and that was in the first year.
And no other textbooks?
No, set
books,
works.
like English books. So a lot of us have English degrees.
Okay.
For the first three, so undergrad BCom, I had textbooks for everything because accounting and stats are hard, and I didn't want to fail. But then for honours, I was like, nah, I'm not spending 900 rand on a book that's 90 pages, and I got like the Chinaman copy.
Yeah. Okay, so when we think about tertiary education and the role that publishers play, the big thing that we have to keep in mind is the whole issue or trend around democratization of learning. Okay, if I could sum it up in one word, it would be that. If you remember the video we watched of Mr. Julius Jago, who taught himself to throw the javelin via YouTube. Okay? That is essentially what democratized learning is. It means that you don't necessarily have to pay anybody to teach and to acquire a new skill so that you are successful in life. What has pushed that trend, I would have to say, is another trend that is called the massification of higher education. Okay. Quickly, I want to see if I can open, a document I want to show you. Just have to find it. Yes, what do you think that means, the massification of higher education?
I think it.
Make it popular.
Hey?
Yeah.
There's a availability. Yeah,
Kind of
okay.
like the whole idea of mass media or mass culture. It's that accessibility and that availability and that like a general awareness of it.
Yeah.
That and
Yeah.
how it can be easily accessed and how everybody knows a place to go.
Yeah. It's also mostly due to population growth. At its most basic level, the massification of higher education is because of population growth. Okay? So, and I want to show you these stats. You have to allow me to open this for you. The number of universities globally can physically accommodate about a third of the world's population in terms of physically going to university and studying, like we're doing now. Going to class, attending class, all of that. So what happened with the massification of higher education is we saw the rise of online learning, e-learning, distance learning for higher education. Now an institution like UNISA will say, but they've always been in massification of higher education and in distance learning. There is a difference between distance learning and online learning. Okay? Because distance learning for UNISA has never been online until the last couple of years. You would get your textbook, your study guide in an envelope sent to you to a UNISA center in a town or a city elsewhere. You'd collect it, you'd study on your own with very little interaction with the lecturer. Email started, later a bit of online learning through Moodle, Sakai or Blackboard. Note all those three, Moodle, Sakai, Blackboard, the LMSs, you know some of them. But it's only in recent years that UNISA said, we're actually going to do some of the learning online. Okay, we're going to take technology, we're going to add pedagogy to that, and we're going to deliver content through an online medium. Okay, yes?
They still do a lot of like paper.
They still do a lot of paper-based.
Says UNISA.
Most exams are still paper-based. So they have exam centers, and the learners go and write their exams at the exam centers.
My boyfriend's studying, I don't know what the degree is, but it's coding. It's called some other thing, and his exams are still written, so when he has to write code, he has to physically write it onto the paper, even though his assignments are done online, like where he submits on, a Word document.
That's so amazing.
I mean, it's ridiculous. It's computers. You're supposed to be, but yeah, he has to write them out.
I'll find that lovely thing on the massification of higher education. So, with the dawn of the massification of higher education, learning now wants to get democratized, and it has to be free, and we need to educate the world's population more and more and more. The traditional methods for students to learn is not going to work. We cannot scale that quickly enough. It is not accessible to everyone, whether it is physical accessibility, price accessibility, cognitive accessibility. Okay. And this has threatened publishers greatly. Now in South Africa, our higher education institution consists of both public and private higher educations. So public higher education is, for example, FITS, so it's all your universities and your universities of technology. Any of those that you can really think of to mention. On the private higher education side, we remember, I'm sure Wilson will recall years and years and years ago, Lyceum in the magazines, they had ads, and then you'd fill in the paper and tear it out, and you'd post that, and then they'd send you course correspondence. There wasn't an email or anything. So I still have an old U magazine that has a print, you fill in your name, and then you tear it out, and then you send it. So the private higher education really were the old Lyceums, Dublins, Boston colleges. Okay, and people thought, if you go that route, it's because shame you couldn't get university entrance. Okay, that perception has changed a lot, and publishers, higher education publishers, have to play a field that is much wider than pure public higher education in South Africa. Although the mass of students is still within public higher education, private higher education is certainly taking off. And they're much more innovative, and they're much easier to adapt to change, and they like new technology, which is where publishers want to go. Okay. Now think of a publisher like Pearson. Pearson Education used to be a publishing company. Why are they not anymore? Who works for Pearson or has worked for Pearson or wants to work for Pearson? Upside down there.
They created their own campus and now run their own
Yeah.
courses.
So, a couple of years back, the MGI, the Midrand Graduate Institute, was bought by Pearson. Pearson globally changed its slogan, changed its branding from being a publishing company, a content delivery company, to changing its slogan to saying we are a learning company. Okay. We want to help people learn from birth to death, lifelong learning. And you'll see most publishers are, just like the school book publishers, are playing in that space. Okay, so Juta has various different departments. They're obviously quite a big legal publisher, competing mostly with someone like Butterworths, who does legal and accounting very well. Most of your higher education publishers will have a specific focus area in which they are very strong. So Van Skyke Publishers has Professor Moore's economics textbooks, which makes it very strong. Juta had psychology textbooks. Oxford has good management textbooks. But they're all playing in the same space, playing for the same level of students, marketing to those students, and I put that in brackets. Because how the process of higher education works, the process of publishing, is as a publisher, you commission a work that is relevant to a lecturer to prescribe. So everything in the higher education market is based on adoptions at universities, whether public, whether private, anything post-school. Think about graduate schools of business. We need an adoption. And there are book lists. You all know book lists. So the sad fact is that publishers conceptualize product, create product, and initially sell product to lecturers who need to adopt that product onto their list. And you want books to become a prescribed textbook, not just something that goes into recommended reading. Okay. Because publishers in higher education base a lot of their decisions on adoptions. Now, that is quite a risky business model in today's world, where if you pull your 5 titles and you say, well, this title is adopted at these 5 institutions, and those adoptions for, let's say, 2019, for the start of the academic year, it's a first semester subject, is a total of 3,500 students. We are two copies into back orders. In other words, the stock is finished. Let's print 4,000. Let's print 3,000, and I'm sure we will sell all of them because the adoption market is 3,500. Do you see how they base all their business decisions on the primary target market who has to prescribe these books?
So the primary target market then
is the lecturer. And if the primary target market is the lecturer, publishers wine and dine lecturers.
How so?
They try and vie for the best authors, so the most authoritative voices in a specific subject area. So let's take something like psychology. So for a subject like psychology, they would have one publisher that focuses on that area, and they would have one marketer that focuses on that area. Very much relationship marketing. So how well I have a relationship with that lecturer means that they will possibly want to publish with me, and if they want to publish with me, I can increase my market share. Okay. So it's a very tight little circle of the publisher with a marketer who focuses on an academic area, who vie for the attention of lecturers through relationship marketing and direct marketing, and then in the hope of getting new product in that they could grow that market for. And direct marketing literally is going to knocking on lecturers' doors like an old encyclopedia salesman with books in a trolley. They can send new book notifications to bookshops and to lecturers via email. They can exhibit at conferences, which most of them do, all of them do. So let's say we've published a first-year psychology textbook now. We're very proud. We got 3 universities to co-collaborate on this book. All 3, the editors and the 7 co-authors, will be at this conference. We're going to launch the book at that psychology conference because all the other lecturers in psychology in South Africa, whether public or private institutions, will be at that conference. It is the annual psychology conference. We will be there. So academic conferences in the tertiary market is extremely important. And the publishers exhibit, they launch books, and I'm using the term wine and dine, but they build relationships. If there's a cocktail function at a conference, you go, not to have wine, but to talk to people. To launch your books, to make your voice heard, to say, look what high quality we publish, and next time we want you to publish with us. What is the one contract in a traditional author's contract that well, let me rather say it like this. Have you heard of a clause called first right of refusal?
Yes.
Okay, what does that mean? You can tell me.
It means that when the author writes the next book, the publisher has the first choice to decide if they want to publish it.
That's it. So in higher education, that contract is very important. Okay, I believe so in trade as well because you want to build a brand. Higher education definitely builds a brand as well for an author. So take someone like Professor Moore. Who knows the Professor Moore economics textbook? Take a lot. Okay, so there's the latest edition. Professor Moore has been publishing that. I published that book as well when I was a publisher. So Professor Moore has been authoring and publishing that book for almost 20 years. He is now 72. I speak to him once a month because he's married to one of my best friends, and he keeps telling me, oh, he's so tired now of doing this, he's so tired. So the publisher has had to co-author for him and get young writers to write with him. But the young writers have to be at the same level as Prof. Moore. They have to have a specific ability, capability, profile within the economic space, the economic higher education space. Okay, but this book has been around for 20 years. Other publishers have tried to write a competing title, publish a competing title. This book is 100% local, which is fantastic. So when we say local, and you'll hear this as well in higher education, is a localized textbook, okay? Local means, and to be honest, years ago it meant we made sure that we have rands and not dollars in the textbook. Now publishers are realizing that local is not just the authors that are actually from South Africa, but to have our voice, our African voice in that book. Remember in the presentation we did the beta readers? So something that some of the higher education publishers are looking at is to actually have students to be their beta readers. Finally! Okay, that's going to come. This book has been around since forever. Pearson had a competing title. Let's see if I can remember what it's called. I wonder if we can search their catalogue. How? I can't remember the name of that book. Did you get it? I don't know. I'll think about it now. They had a competing title with fabulous bells and whistles, an online program. It was fantastic. And it got prescribed at a number of institutions. So what's happening in the higher education market is a learner management system, LMS, at universities. So UNISA has an LMS. I think WITS uses Sakai.
Yeah.
So you either have Sakai, Blackboard, or Moodle. Those are the three LMSs, learner management systems. And learner management systems, I'd say 15 years ago when I was publishing textbook, I could still get away with having a really good textbook. And maybe some supplementary material, I kid you not, on a CD or a USB drive. Now, with the increasing use and application of an LMS at universities, lecturers are being forced to create online content in case students cannot be in class, to communicate with students when they are not in class, to set assignments online, to have videos online, to take more and more the courses online. Now, publishers have a threat and an opportunity in that in higher education. On the one hand, there is the threat that this content that they generate there could replace the content of the textbook if it is a lecturer that hasn't bought into a textbook. And lecturers have to buy into a textbook. I'm a terrible example. I haven't used that book enough, so please excuse me. But lecturers have to buy into a textbook. Okay. And here is the problem. I didn't choose that textbook. It was chosen for me. Okay? I'm just illustrating the reality. So lecturers have to buy into a textbook. That was the threat. That if they don't, they'll do everything online, they'll start creating their own content. And then higher education publishers said, well, if they have to create content, why don't we create the content that they need to put up there? And so finally, publishers started looking at what we call micro content, higher education publishers. The smallest piece of coded information with value in a textbook. The smallest piece of coded information with value. I'm going to show you one. I hope the video is still online here. Everybody hates Pearson. Oh, that must be an interesting video. So Pearson calls their content, they actually call it smart content. So there was such a lovely video. Let's see if we can go to YouTube and find it. So smart content says, here I have a textbook. Quickly give me that textbook of yours, Michelle. And instead of selling this textbook, I say there are 15 chapters to sell. So each chapter is a product. So there's 15 products already, not one. There are 49 graphs in this book. So another 49 products. There are 17 case studies in this book. Another 17 products. We would like lecturers to pick this chapter, that graph, and this case study to use on their LMS. And then they purchase it as standalone items.
So like buying an individual song as opposed to the album.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this has a massive impact on higher education publishing. And where do you think, what does your gut tell you? Where's the impact?
I would
Book
say on
sales.
orphans.
Authors, sales, both of them. So authors are used to creating something with a golden thread, okay? Users don't need a golden thread so much. When I tell you research, find out what is water, Lewis, what are you going to do? Google water. And what are you going to get?
Probably first page or first link, Winky.
Yeah?
And maybe some articles.
So this is, if I search water, this is what I get. So, okay, I'm now taking it to a very basic level because it obviously impacts school publishing as well. But let's take something really hard. Let's take, it's not hard, supply and demand. Let's take that because that's a concept for first year economics, okay? Major concept. So immediately I see the law of supply and demand, Investopedia, and it's university, I don't know how referenced that is. There's the Britannica, which is an encyclopedia. That seems like a rather trustworthy piece of content. What do we have here? 1 Minute Economics, ACDCL Leadership, the International Monetary Fund. They're quite big. I'm sure they won't lie to me. Diagrams, Economics Help, Khan Academy. Who's heard of Khan Academy?
That was like the only reason I passed high school.
Tell them about Khan Academy.
It's an organization that creates videos that subsidize pretty much every subject, and they explain everything from like grade 8 maths to university medical courses.
And it is all for?
Dang.
Free.
For free? So that was a question I had. Like, how do publishers compete with free?
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
That's the question.
how do they? I think what they refer to it as open source.
Open source is one thing. So there is open source. So open source is anything that has been officially published or accredited that is openly available. There's a difference between open source and public domain as well. So public domain is something where the copyright has fallen away and it is now available in the public. Open source says it is accredited by an institution or an accredited body, but it is available to the public.
Right.
So many universities, Wits as well, has an open source resource center for lecturers and for students. So open source modeling is quite difficult, the licensing. So they buy a much bigger license as the university, and then all the resources are available to the students. Scientific journals like Taylor and Francis, scientific publishers, Taylor and Francis, and who else is there? Gee, I don't even remember Taylor and Francis from my day. They will sell a license to a library, a university library. University library takes that license and we have access for a year as a student. But that license gets annually updated.
So the product is the license.
Yes.
As opposed to the content.
Yeah. So it's easy enough for scientific content because there's been a review process. There has been someone who says, this is good, make changes, published. And scientific articles get published in accredited journals. And the National Research Foundation decides which journals locally get accredited. Other bodies in other countries, similar to the NRF, accredits scientific journals. So you access or buy that content through that. But now think of a textbook. That is not accredited anywhere, except by the fact that, well, Alison Braverstock this is her 5th edition of that book, so gee, it must be quite good. It didn't fail after the 1st edition. Routledge is quite a heavy-duty publisher. I think we can trust their content. But any of the information in that book, you would probably be able to get online for free. Where is the challenge for the user and the opportunity for the publisher?
I think the information.
Hey?
Finding the information.
Finding?
Right.
I think that the updated content, because lecturers update their content with the times, but not necessarily everything online, that's free updates. So I know that my boyfriend has a problem with buying textbooks that are like the recent ones or the ones that's cheaper, but then the work that he has to do is related to a diagram that has been changed for the newer edition.
Sure. Okay.
So it's that the newest edition is the updated edition is the most relevant.
Sure.
So I think if publishers, that's where publishers
Yeah.
are still succeeding.
Yeah, I agree. This is so interesting. Okay, so yes, we have an author, we have a publisher's name, it's in its 5th edition and we update it. Okay. is changing in terms of the information needs. I mean, when you think about something you want to know, what is your first point of reference? So to give you an example, the teacher on Saturday said she has a WhatsApp group for her students. And they can talk to her anytime, which I think is quite fantastic. And then when they struggle with something, she teaches maths literacy. So one student would call her and say, she's not sure about this, but she found this video on YouTube. And it explained it like this, doesn't make sense. And then the teacher says, just post the video here so that I can, on the group, for us all to see. And then she went and made comments and said, yes, this is true, but remember that, remember that, remember that. Okay? So students' first thought, and now as consumers, generation Y and up, is to go to Google. Okay? But Google is a library.
Yeah, almost so.
That's it. She's a librarian that we ask, give me something on supply and demand. And the little algorithms go and picks it off a data shelf somewhere and shows it to us. It's just another librarian. Okay, it's a digital librarian, for that matter. So what publishers are struggling with is how to compete with free. And I think they can compete with free. Because there is a difference between curating content, remember those terms, and aggregating content. When we aggregate content, we just pull it together. When you do, for example, your literature review for your master's or for your mini dissertation, you're basically aggregating content. You're saying, this source says this, this source says this, this source says this, but your voice is nowhere. And then when you do your data analysis, you put in your voice and you say, but so-and-so said this, and look at my data, blah, blah, blah. Then you curate content. So the moment we add our own voice, we change, we update, we make it more accessible to people, not physically accessible, but to access that information. Then we curate content. And publishers, higher education publishers, are curators of content. Now I'll take you one step further. Who else is a curator of content, higher education content? Each of you in this room. So let's say all 2, 4, 6, 7, 9 of you, 10 of you had Psychology 1 last year. And you decided that textbook was so hard. And you're a study group. And you summarize the chapter, and you summarize the chapter. And each of you summarized the chapter, and you decided to physically sell your notes to students. And say, don't do that 1,000-page textbook. Our study group summarized all of the notes in 50 pages, all of the learning, the major learnings, based on the demarcation the lecturer gave. Study this. Did you not aggregate content? Did you not go and read a page and say, all right, abnormal psychology, founder, basic theory, foundations 4, application model, whatever. So what we're seeing worldwide is a growth of student-based learning. I want to call them pirate programs, but they're not pirate, they're completely legal. Where students are saying, wait a minute, we're studying this anyway. Let's make notes, let's make them good notes, and make them available for free.
Now, what did you call that? Student-based?
Student-based. So student-based, I'd say content platform, or startups, if you want to call them that. Yes?
Isn't that kind of like Spark Notes and Shoe?
Yeah.
Because they do exactly that.
Exactly that. So there are 1 or 2 of them that have actually gone to a point where they commercialize their notes. And what they're doing fringes on being illegal to the point that if they make notes, electronic notes, digital notes, and they screenshot the graph in the publisher's textbook, and they put that into their electronic notes, and they compile that as a PDF, not a book, PDF, and they sell that PDF. Then they're infringing the publisher's copyright.
But if you just
Yeah, drew their own chart.
If they drew it by hand, they're not.
Then I just do that.
Because if you take this graph for supply and demand, this graph isn't there's no copyright in the graph. Where's the copyright for any publisher? Because the supply and demand graph is the same the world over. Even Martians use this one. It's the same thing. Okay? So where is the copyright for the publisher?
In the book.
In the? This is the content. In the design and the layout.
Yeah.
As simple as that. That's the foot we have to stand on. Is the fact that we designed it to look like that and to be that thing. Our x-axis is blue and our y-axis is green, and beneath it we curated this author and that author, and we put our author's voice in. That's all higher education publishers have to stand on, is design and layout, and the fact that it's our author and our printed book. Because supply and demand is everywhere. If I took the molecular makeup of water, H2O+++, there's no copyright in that. Maybe God has copyright, I don't know, but that's it. But how you design that in a book, that's where the publisher's copyright lies. So in a digital world, publishers are relying, especially higher education publishers, are relying very much on the traditional way of producing product to protect themselves and to move forward. So what am I saying? We're seeing students becoming curators of content. We're seeing publishers being less publishers and moving into the education space, like Pearson with Pearson Higher Education Institution. Pearson was at a point where they wanted to own a school, a primary school. That is how far they will go. Okay. And they can, because we're seeing a rise of private education due to the massification of higher education. Just learning in general. There are not enough universities for all the world's population who can go and study. Okay. So publishers go to these conferences. Let's get back to the conferences. They market, they sell, they wine, they dine. Yes.
I lost my train of thought. Design and layout is where publishers' copyright
Resides. Yeah.
That's all that's
And in the way that the author wrote it, if the author presented it in a unique way, then absolutely. So I remember one case when I was at Van Skype Publishers, and it was such a thing where an author from an Oxford textbook on management copied one of our management textbooks, but copied it to the extent that you wouldn't initially say it's copied. And then our author picked it up and said, my approach to this is too unique for this to be by chance. And then we had to make a case to say, shall we settle out of court? Okay, because, so the author's voice is extremely important. The author creates the product, and that's why direct marketing, relationship marketing is so important. But higher education publishers need to understand the fact that our consumers look different. Lecturers are trying to create content, they hate it to go onto an LMS. They are petrified. 2 years ago when you spoke to any lecturer and you said, are you using your LMS? They'd say, well, there's a calendar. They'll use the calendar function. And then slowly but surely they started creating videos and uploading documents and doing their assignments online. But that was a massive step for publishers, for authors. Because they were used to just doing it face-to-face in class, and now they had to go sit behind the doors and create this online and do the uploading, and how do you do a video, and what's too big a file and what's too small a file, and what if the link is not whitelisted and it lands into a trash email, and all of these tech things lecturers were suddenly faced with. So publishers have seen that opportunity. So we're moving into the tech space in a big way with publishing. Lots of mobile solutions, obviously ebooks, smart content, breaking down content, selling it in its smallest valuable bit and seeing where we can sell it, where can we find an offset market for that, and how can we take that content and put it back together in new and unique ways that's cost effective and actually does what it's supposed to do. Okay, it's completely breaking down content. And we've moved into a space where publishers have also started to look at proper data analytics, big data. And for higher education, this is actually very nice. Very, very nice. So any platform that a publisher creates for higher education learning, if you take something like Pearson's My Economics, that's not the one. Wait, My Economics. There's an access code. There's an e-text. So Pearson created their lab products. Lab products, this is just a PDF of the lab product. Lab products are basically online learning programs that look like an LMS, but with their content in. Okay? So they're selling their labs. They call them labs. Online learning labs. And a lot of publishers are doing this. They're saying, what can we do? We have the content. So if an LMS provides a learner journey, let's create a product that provides a learner journey. And to a certain extent, publishers are competing with the likes of Moodle, Sakai, and Blackboard. To the point that any of, for example, Pearson's My Econ Lab products can integrate into Moodle, Sakai, or Blackboard. So that a student has single sign-on. Because that's a big thing for students. I don't want to have 10 passwords, just one password. Okay. So these type of products are full online learning platforms that higher education publishers use to analyze learner data. And these platforms, just like Moodle or Sakai or Blackboard, can tell you where do you need to focus your learning attention on. Okay, so it creates a unique learner journey. Or where are your skills sound enough for you to move forward. Here you need to practice more, there you can move forward. So big data for higher education is a big thing. Because suddenly with these type of platforms, you can actually analyze what students are doing. So Blackboard, Moodle and Sakai was initially sold to universities as an empty shell with no content. Then publishers saw the opportunity to put content in there. Then Blackboard, Moodle and Sakai realized we could be creating our own content. Okay? That's what's possible in the digital world. So now, publishers said, right, we'll create a better LMS than the LMS people did. And publishers created an LMS. And now finally the two are talking. But that's kind of how the competition went in higher education publishing. So, your experience from content when you studied. Did you use textbooks? Did you use Sakai? What did you experience?
My undergrad, especially classes like econ and stats, we used the textbooks in class, but then we had content like tests and labs online that we had to do like every week or something that was 4 marks, and then
Yes.
it would form part of our marks, and if we didn't do it, then we were penalized, and if we, I don't know, it was like a pick the right one, like pick the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Multiple choice, yeah.
So it was a bit of both, especially for like stats, accounting, numbers.
And was there anything in there that you found uncomfortable? That you found that it's too hard with a textbook or it's too hard with the online platform? Was there anything that gave you issues?
You didn't get to see what answer was wrong unless the lecturer published the answers after. And that was very irritating, because then even if you got 9 out of 10, you wouldn't know
Yeah.
which. Because you
So that's
couldn't
a
go
big-
back and see the questions, and you couldn't go back and
So that's a big question for both school and university publishers, is the development of assessments And so higher education publishers, what did we do 10 years ago? We had a question bank on a CD-ROM at the back of the book. It was very innovative. I did those. Okay, it was very innovative. And then came LMSs, and we realized we have to be able to load those question banks onto an LMS. Okay, multiple choice questions. Students always want to practice more, try more, see more case studies. So all that, I want to say, that kind of peripheral content on the outskirts of the main content, that's where the students are actually more interested in it, and the lecturers. Because those kind of tools save lecturers money and time. Those kind of tools help students. Okay, so publishers are not just even creating the core content anymore, they're creating assessments, they're creating learner journeys. They are analyzing data to show lecturers how students are using their products. And the big word is efficacy. Who's heard of efficacy? E-F-F-I-C-A-C-Y. E-F-F-I-C-A-C-Y, efficacy. Every publisher in higher education wants to prove efficacy. It works. Our digital products work. So they analyze the big data. They hold focus groups with students. They do online surveys with students to understand how they are using their products. And efficacy, the main point of efficacy is to say, here is a group of students that is achieving at this rate and at this level. Then we used the lecturers, the university, whoever used our product, and those students are now achieving at this level with these results. So efficacy is creating results-driven content creation in higher education.
Wait, results driven?
Publishing.
Content.
Yeah, content creation. So I can't just go and publish an author now because it's nice. I'll do it if he's got a good market and I can sell 1,000 in the first year. But soon after that, I'm going to tell him what additional material are we going to create and in what format so that who can access it and when can we pilot that content. We're finally hearing higher education publishers saying, let's pilot content. Yeah, they pilot content.
Can you speak more to that? What exactly?
Okay?
Can you speak more to that?
So, instead of publishing a book and saying, here it is students, use this book. If you don't have this book, you're going to suffer. They will actually say, let's create the first 5 chapters as an e-PDF or an e-text. And we make that available, or as an EPUB, and we make that available in your LMS, let's say Wits University Psychology, and let's test how the students engage with that content. Together with that, we've worked out 5 lectures worth of lecturing content, PowerPoints for the lecturers perhaps, 2 assignments and 2 assessments, all based on the first 5 chapters of our book. Let's pilot that content. Yes?
What do lecturers do anymore then?
Right.
They
Everybody
research.
doing everything else.
Because
They
Remember-
facilitate.
the lecturer is the one who's choosing the content that the publishers are providing. So
Remember how a university works.
Yeah.
This is an institute of research. That is the difference between coming to university and going to Old Technikon. Lecturers here, the university gets income from government based on the amount of research output they create. Research output is created by being published in accredited journals, because that is how we prove that we are contributing to the world's knowledge. And that is what a university should be doing. We're privileged when we're able to study here, but that is why when you study at university, very often it feels like the content is so disconnected from the practical. Because this isn't a place for practical. This is a place for higher thinking. If you want to do the content, then you do Damelin or a practical, Damelin Lyceum or a technical. That is the reality. But what I can tell you, as someone who has a university degree, if I compare myself to friends who did not go into higher education, my ability to take information and look at it, assess its value, and deduct from that what I need and apply it is much higher than people who can only apply. Who says that?
Arguing about that yesterday.
Who's that with?
My fiance said the exact same thing you say. We were discussing the same issue.
And you know what? You're not going to find it now if I can just leave you at peace with it. But you're going to find it when you go into work one day. It's such a privilege to be able to be at a university. Because the lecturers work very hard at sharpening their knives of research the whole time. And the way that content is very often presented to us is for that critical thinking, not for the practical. But believe me, when you're in a job one day, you're going to realize I think differently. I just think differently. And hone those skills. It's powerful. Okay, where did I leave off? Efficacy. Piloting and efficacy, data. Extremely important. All publishers are piloting and testing for efficacy. All right. So, we no longer can just go to conferences on subject matter. We go to conferences as higher education publishers on digital learning. We go to conferences on tech development. And we're seeing many higher education publishers struggling with the fact of should they develop tech or only develop content? Or should they partner with tech or not partner? Should they own the technology or not? So many publishers went the route initially of owning technology, and then they realized it's going to cost them lots of money to do that. It's much better to have a tech partner. And many publishers will have what they call a vendor questionnaire for tech partners. So they onboard their tech partners now, based on their own requirements, and importantly, based on the requirements of the market. So if they know, for example, of the 13 higher education institutions, 11 of them use Sakai, and Sakai's integration requirements look like this, then they will look for a vendor partner who can build to those requirements. That's scalability, that's cost effectiveness. So higher education publishers are developing their tech capabilities much more. They are expanding their product lines to meet consumer needs in a much greater way. And those consumer needs are all those products on the outskirts of the main book or the main content. Things like assessment, like question banks, like case studies, like glossaries, an online glossary that reads you the word, glossaries in different languages. So it's an amazing time for higher education publishers, because although they are threatened by a lot of technology and convergence of technology and consumerism around technology, there's also tremendous opportunity for them to create new things. Now, the last thing I want to talk about tonight is fees must fall. We cannot have a class on higher education publishing without at least some discussion on fees must fall. How do you think that impacted higher education publishing? Yes. How cheap are textbooks? Now, one of the key driving forces in the higher education market space is the number of students who are part of the National Bursary Fund. Okay? Those students get allocated a certain number of fees annually to purchase their textbooks. And they must purchase their textbooks, so that is great. But the National Bursary Fund the students, when they do start working, they aren't paying enough those bursaries and those loans that they got, and so that body has run out of money, essentially. So the publishers are now going to see less and less sales because the students who had critical mass to purchase books can't purchase them anymore. Because a very important feature of our higher education system, the National Bursary Fund, has actually run out of money. So what happened with Fees Must Fall is we saw almost anything that is expensive and considered a non-essential in higher education being thrown under the same comb, if you want to call it that, than university fees. And as a publisher, my heart is like, yo, but it's so expensive to make books, and just realize we're doing it for the greater good, blah, blah, blah. But there are other models in the world where free education is working. Okay? So it's very hard to look at one or the other. What are your thoughts on that? Let's have a mature class discussion for 2 minutes. Where are we on Fees Must Fall? You had it quite extensively here on Wits Campus, eh? So what did you experience? What are your views on that? Because this relates back to things being free. I mean, if all the world's knowledge is free, then why do higher education publishers even exist? I believe they exist for all those things on the outside, the assessments and the online learning, because they're doing that really well, and you can't get that just anywhere.
I have a follow-up question.
So, how do you think Fees Must Fall? How did that impact you, and how do you think that is going to impact the future for higher education publishing?
I think it might damage the quality of education that's received. So where we see free primary and secondary schools, the quality of education that they receive there is not the same as the quality of education that you receive at a private school, or even a partly private and government school. So although I am in full support of free education or education available to everyone, I'm not necessarily sure that free is the way to go, because then university degrees in South Africa will just become like high school degrees from government schools that don't really mean anything.
Okay. Any other opinions?
I think people are going to get more creative in how to get content. Like when I think of my media course, we didn't have textbooks. We had our lecturers picking a bunch of journal articles that they had access to, printing them and binding them in a book and giving them to us. And that's how we got our content. So we still had reading we were meant to do every week, just like a textbook, but no one paid for it, and lecturers used what they had to, and some of the things they've even written.
So you got it for
themselves.
free?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not free.
Well, I mean, it was
You
like
pay for the
you pay for the
You
course.
pay for the course.
So you pay for that printing, and you pay for that book, the printed book, but it wasn't necessarily like paying for the course and then going and having to buy a textbook in addition.
So that's another nice opportunity that publishers are seeing, is the direct selling to universities and including textbooks and course fees. What is the negative of that?
The course fees are going to go up.
And there's another negative. What happens to another vital part of our industry? Well, I don't even want to say vital, but another part of industry that creates a lot of jobs. Booksellers. So if publishers are selling directly to universities, which they're able to do, and books are, the price of the textbook is included in the course fees. Let's say the course fees go up with 200, 250 Rand. I can guarantee you, if publishers can do direct selling, and if there are 50 students in that class, and they know they're going to give 50 books out in class, and it's included in the course fees, they will have massive discounts as well, because it's a firm sale. So booksellers are not going to be able to compete with that. So one year at Parside was a big debate on the publishers must stop direct selling. Eesh, well, we don't have to. because we're also fighting for our piece of the value chain to continue. Okay. So, in South Africa, I think access to good quality content is very important. I think I know that the universities are really moving to an elevated place in terms of delivering learning through LMSs, which is fantastic. And I predict that in years to come, sales for higher education will not come from printed books. It will come from selling curated content, smart bits of content to a very fragmented marketplace of students, lecturers, possibly even technology providers.
But you know what that is going to do? This model of lecturers recommending books is going to disappear in the future. Because if the curriculum is set very clearly, then who is to say I can't use any content that would allow me to pass?
Absolutely. And we haven't seen any higher education publishers actively marketing. I haven't. Maybe you guys can pick it up somewhere, or maybe you've seen it, but actively marketing to their secondary target market, which I think in future will become their primary target market.
I wonder though, if education had to become free, wouldn't that then be at the, like, public schools be monitored by the government, and then we take publishers would become like school publishers, where we have to, the government will set the curriculum for each course, and you would.
That could happen.
Because if they're the ones paying for it, technically they would want to make sure that they want to control what you're learning.
Absolutely.
So we'd be all like
Yeah.
going for tenders for.
That could happen. You can't say whatever happened, that could absolutely happen. If government pays for education, they will say, right, but then we want to see our content in there. If so, for a long time we had a whole issue of decolonized content in textbooks. Sorry, I'm talking so much, my voice is going. So that could happen.
And also,
Yes.
like, if you go to a marketing class here and you go to a marketing class, it will never be exactly the same marketing class, even if it's the exact same, or it will never be the exact same textbook or the exact same class, which means that there are different avenues of thought that you go through in each class. So it could be the same topic, but you'll think about it differently. Now, if everyone is being taught from the exact textbook with the exact lesson plan, their minds are going to be trained to think that way only, without the different lecturers' inputs or publishers' inputs on how to differently interpret that topic.
Yes, I think we call it communism. Okay? But the reality is, as publishers in higher education, I think we are at the cusp of great things to come. There is great opportunity for higher education publishers. They have to step out of the current mode. And currently they're marketing to authors. They're marketing to lecturers to get that content onto the LMSs. There has to be a way to get to the students. And I know from experience, new things, new innovative products and services are created, not for the end user, the student in mind, because the perception is students won't pay for something if it's not prescribed by a lecturer. So that's a mindset change that I think publishers have to make. Because students will tell you, and publishers do this in their pilots, if we created a platform like this and you had to pay 200 Rand a month, but you get access to all your psychology, let's say 50 Rand a month, but you get access to all your psych content for the whole year. On your mobile as well, videos, assessments, all of that delivered. Who would not purchase that?
Yeah.
If you knew that was quality content designed for my course, for which I'm getting a degree or a piece of paper at the end of the day to say, this is from Wits. You chose to come here. You didn't go somewhere else.
So like an academic Netflix.
Yeah. I like that concept.
That would be fly.
You start, we'll come work for you. Like academic Netflix. It's possible
Definitely.
because consumers want it. Remember what Kevin Spacey said. So we're at the moment giving it to consumers like this, students, and saying, enjoy. Consume nothing like that anymore, except us book lovers, but we're special. And so the issue around accreditation of learning is very, very important. Because if you look at things like Udemy, the MIT open courses, you can do any course for free online without the accreditation. And this now links back to business, because the moment you want to get employed, they'll ask you, where is your degree from?
Okay, but you see,
Certification.
Roddy, that is also going to change. You know why? Because we're busy institutionalizing and changing mindsets.
Yeah.
So, 3 or 4 years ago, Udemy wasn't popular. Now it is so popular, it is becoming part of educational culture.
Yes.
Now, the National Qualifications Framework has actually leveled the playing field. So I could go do a course on Udemy, take my certificate, and then go and then show the curriculum and go and claim credits.
That's right.
So it's going to change in the end.
It's going to change.
Because in the end, the government is going to say, look, we need to extend education to all the far-flung areas. We don't have enough money to build brick and mortar. So the model has to change in some
Has to.
way.
It has to.
Yeah. So it will change.
It will
gradually.
change.
Yeah.
That's a very important point. So this is for me one of the exciting industries in publishing.
Definitely. A lot of potential.
Because there is actually so much opportunity. And learning is such a big thing in our collective minds as a species at this point. And it's all because of democratized content, which has led to democratized learning. Okay.
Right, democratized.
But you see, someone has to force the
The
market.
change.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you know, the discussion we had last week, I went and
Yes.
did the reading.
You
And
can talk now.
yes.
I can see you're eager to talk.
Just one example, but
Yeah.
I'll talk to you outside. It's in America, you can see very clearly that Amazon is they're a huge vacuum cleaner, and they're cleaning out whole
Industries.
Absolutely. Whole industry.
Yeah.
Come on, again.
And there was a survey that was done by what do you call it? A local self-reliance NGO
Yeah,
of
yeah.
3,000 companies, and they asked them, "What is your most worry?" They give them a list.
Yeah.
Their competitors and so on and so forth, and Amazon was there. 50% of them listed Amazon as their biggest threat. Now Amazon has got Amazon Prime. They're offering 1 ebook free every month, unlimited audiobooks. So if you are members, and there are 2017, 50 million Americans were part of that.
Hey.
So in a few years, they will change the mindset.
Definitely.
Why can't we do the same here?
Force it, Wilson. The publishers hear me now, they'll burn me at the stake. But it's true. We could see that happening here. We've yet to see. What do you think? We've yet to see a publisher really. Publishers here are still afraid of tech, especially trade publishers. Very afraid of tech. And they don't want to. Oh, you see, Amazon had tech, and then they said the tech is not tech, it's a service. That's part of the service innovation. Whereas here we try to associate with the tech, and then we realize consumers are on all the tech, we can't be with the tech, we just need to do content. So everyone's still jumping around on the tech.
But how do you apply force? Like, what strategies can you employ to force a change to take place?
You have to do new products for new markets. Okay. So remember, I have to show you. Now you've forced me to show you something brilliant. I'll be quick. No, you still have me for 20 minutes. Remember I mentioned something called the Ansoff matrix. And then I said we don't have time to look at it now. We'll look at it someday. So who has heard, I think you've heard of it, Wilson. Have you not heard of the Ansoff matrix? Oh wait, it's off. My internet's off. I'm putting it back on. Because what you're asking is how can you force the change in an industry?
Right.
So you either have to be the force, dun, dun, dun,
Ah,
and how do you become the force?
yes, this is
Let
what I
me just
want to
quickly
know.
get my internet back on. No, don't connect to EduRoam. There we go. Is it on? Wait, let's go off. Yoo-hoo! Let's see. Come back to me. Come back to me. That's like Kate Winslet inside Titanic. Come back. Come back. And she was shouting for Leonardo DiCaprio. Come back. Come back. Remember that? Sorry. Such a nice movie.
It's really sinking.
Ay, ay, ay. Come on.
It is green. So it's coming.
Okay, let's do this. So the Ansoff matrix is something we can use for business development. And people use it then to create their strategy based on what they've done there. And essentially what Ansoff matrix is that you evaluate your business in 4 quadrants, okay? Based on existing products and new products, existing markets and new markets, okay? I'm so sorry. Anytime now would be good. Ay, ay, ay. Let's see if I can get it. I'll apply Wilson's tech skills again. No signal. Why?
Yes, yeah, I just don't have a number to my book.
Okay. Can you take my number and then you can know what she says?
Yeah. Sure, no problem.
That's on the class. What is it?
Can you yourself have a number?
Yeah, it's you have it.
Can you quickly reboot? Okay, it's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so this is a basic Ansoff matrix. So the Ansoff matrix is you analyze your business, and on this axis, the y-axis, you have markets, and on the x-axis, you have products. Okay. Here we've got new products and current products, existing products. Markets, new markets, existing products, new products. So you go sit down with your team in the business and you say, what are our current products that we deliver to the current markets? And you say, we do printed books to students. That would be, and now we've got to decide, based on existing products and existing markets, how do we further penetrate that market? And then you build strategies for that. If you want to take existing products to new markets, in other words, let's not sell to students only in 5 institutions, but to 10 institutions, we have to develop that market. How do we develop that market? And then we do strategies here. Okay. But this is also based on existing products. Okay. Or services. That's where innovation comes in. Product innovation, service innovation, whatever. This is actually all business model innovation. When we look at new products for the existing markets, we say, what do our students need that we're not delivering? Assessments, So new products and services. And then we develop those products. But the moment you want to develop new products for new markets, it means you're diversifying your business into something else. And that's where change has to take place.
Can you
That's where
explain?
you can force change. So let's say within our business, we currently do not do any mobile related products. So we do no apps. So apps for our business would be a new product. Okay? And we're not selling those apps. We want to do apps, for example, for professionals and not just students. Because we've had students, we've serviced the students here, and then we never speak to them again once they finish studying. So maybe we should create apps for professionals based on our other products or content that we can sell new products to a new market. So this is where you grow and diversify your business into something else. Now, any good business strategy has all four of these. Any good industry has all four of these. So you could apply an Ansoff matrix to an industry if you really want to find that sweet spot and say, as an industry, let's take tertiary education, what existing products are we delivering to what existing markets? Textbooks to lecturers and students. What existing products can we deliver to new markets as an industry? Cannot textbooks be applied to another market? Well, maybe professionals or, I don't know. We'll have to think about that. What new products can our industry create for existing markets? So that's where your innovation for products come from. And then as an industry, what can we do that's so new that nobody has thought of before or even knew they wanted? Because this is where Amazon plays. Amazon constantly plays in this space.
Okay, I understand. Okay.
Okay. So we apply it to a business or we can apply it to an industry. It's much more difficult at an industry level, but you can do it. I love Ansoff. It's fun. Okay, that makes sense. Great. I'm not going to talk more on higher education. I think you've heard enough of my voice tonight. Your next assignment I'll give to you next week, so that's the one which is based on the education, tertiary or trade market. And I will let you know as soon as I've confirmed our guest speaker. And I look forward to marking your assignments. And I hope you learned something new tonight.
Awesome.